This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted to be joined again by Eddie Hearn. We are a matter of hours before the start of Okolie Glavatsky live on Sky Sports. How you doing, Ed?
Doing good. Excited about tonight. Good to be back in here. Last time we had two tremendous fight nights with Warrington Lara and Josh Kelly against Avanesian. Hoping for another good one tonight as we kind of close in on the last few behind closed doors, hopefully. Fans next week. Conor Benn behind closed doors, May the 1st behind closed doors, May the 15th behind closed doors, and then that's it. Hopefully, touch wood. So, going to soak it up, enjoy it, and get ready for a big night.
No fans behind closed doors tonight, but with certainly some of the fights that we're on, that we're expecting to see tonight, or that we're going to see tonight, rather, should I say, I reckon there's going to be quite the atmosphere tonight. A couple of really good fights.
I think so. I mean, we were just talking about off camera. I think if you didn't really... I mean, you're a bit of a pervert in terms of boxing stats and fighters, and you're talking about, wow, you watched this Dukar, you know, and he had a war with Igorov and a great fight with Pesar. Obviously, people look at Dukar at 11-3 or whatever he is and go, oh, that's a walkover fight. I'm not saying it's a 50-50 fight, but it's a really dangerous fight for Chris Billham-Smith. I actually think Bet Connolly fight against Ramla Ali is a dangerous fight. She's up at 127 pounds because it was late notice. She really wants to box at 122 pounds. I think Fowler's got a big step up. I think Joe Caldina's got a good fight, and of course the main event is the world title. It's always a little bit, I'd say, disappointing, but you know, when you think about really, Okolie should be winning the world title at the O2, you know, in front of 18,000. So it's about getting the job done tonight in what I think is a really tough fight. People just presume Okolie's going to steamroll through him, which is, you know, a real example of how highly people rate Okolie and his power, because Glowacki is an elite cruiserweight. You know, he's looking to become a 3-time world champion tonight. If the fight goes deep, I think it's going to get really difficult for Lawrence Okolie. I do think he also has the ability to take him out early because of his power. But, you know, someone made a good point the other day, which was, you know, is it world-class power? You know, and you don't really know, do you, till you get in world-class. I do think he punches very, very hard, and we'll find out tonight if that's the kind of power that can take these top guys out.
Now, we spoke plenty about the card yesterday. Of course, last night we had the announcement of the May the 1st card, so let's talk about that. Chisora versus Parker. Chisora-Parker, not Parker-Chisora. Parker coming off a big win, Chisora coming off a loss in a non-title fight. What was that about?
I think that's just because of where you are, to be quite honest. I mean, it's pretty much an eliminator for the WBO, because the winner's going to go to number 2 after, or number 1 actually, after the Usyk-Joyce fight. I just think Chisora's the one with a big UK profile. You know, Chisora, although lost to Usyk, put up a great performance. Parker won last time. I don't know. Actually, last time the fight was made, it was Parker-Chisora. So, yeah, whichever way you like it.
Both fighters not for a world title. Chisora coming off the back of a loss. Parker close, but I believe a deserved win over Junior Farr. Is it a pay-per-view fight or is it a pay-per-view card?
Definitely a pay-per-view card. I mean, it's difficult. I was thinking about this on the way up because I knew you were going to interview me. I know you like asking all these questions. I guess when someone says, is it pay-per-view? I think that's quite subjective. But I keep saying the only way you can really determine what is pay-per-view by the numbers that it delivers. When we did White Povetkin, people said, it's not pay-per-view. Well, when it racks up 300,000 buys, you kind of have to say it definitely is pay-per-view. Usyk-Chisora, that's not pay-per-view. 285,000 buys is pay-per-view. This one will do over 300,000 buys because of the card, because of the fights, because of the moment, because of everything that's happening. And so will next week, White Povetkin. White Povetkin 2, that's not pay-per-view. He's just got knocked out. So, I don't know. I guess we've spent 10 years debating what is and isn't pay-per-view. I feel, and by the way, there's still 2 fights to come. This is going to be an outstanding card. And once again, if you don't think it's pay-per-view and you don't want to spend £19.99 watching 6 hours of championship fights and 3 world title fights and a heavyweight fight and probably one of the biggest fights in women's boxing and a Londoner going for an absolute shock world championship fight against maybe a pound for pound quality star and the return of the Eubanks, then I'm fine with it. You know, I've kind of like matured to a stage now where there's no point having arguments about it. You'll decide. And, you know, but I think we would have to have put the card on that we have to for myself to be comfortable with standing here and canvassing with you about it being a pay-per-view card.
But you accept that Chisora-Parker as a standalone pay-per-view fight, obviously we'll talk about the rest of the card in a minute, is not a pay-per-view fight on its own.
I think if it was a poor card or nothing on the card with that as a main event, I think, and it's difficult because Chisora always does great numbers. It's a fight that actually was doing great numbers digitally for us in the build-up last time. And that was supposed to go on a Josh Taylor card. And actually, Josh Taylor against Regis Prograis was probably my lowest pay-per-view for ever. It was, ever. And we really suffered with losing Chisora-Parker because a lot of people were excited about that fight. So Chisora always draws good numbers, but I think to put that as a standalone with no bulk behind it wouldn't have been, wouldn't have been as easy for me to stand up here and feel comfortable with myself.
Not really sure that I've ever heard you say that.
Very comfortable with my decision. I am, because I look at it and I go, I know it will do numbers. I know it's a cracking card. When you announce a pay-per-view that you know is going to get is it? I was really happy with the response. I know some people said, but actually, most of the responses was, fucking hell, what a card. And along with others, I'm not sure that's pay-per-view. Chisora on pay-per-view. But, we're kind of in a position now where coming up to the end of our season runs 30th of June till, 1st of July to 30th of June. So we're coming up to the end of the season now, and I've got a lot of fighters to get out, and I just can't do it, to be quite frank. I don't have the amount of shows to do Chisora-Parker, to do Taylor. They're all individual headline fights, aren't they? Craig Richards against Bivol, Eubank, the other fight that's going to be... They're all individual headline fights. So I've got the option to get a few moans and just whack it on one card and give you a monster night where you might or might not buy it, or not do it at all. And I'm going to do it. So...
Chris Eubank Jr., of course you don't promote him. I spoke to Calla last night. I said to Calla, what we've heard from Eubank and Calla in the last few months is Gennady Golovkin, Jaime Munguia, Ryota Murata. Marcus Morrison, with all due respect to Marcus Morrison, is not on the same level of those guys. Can you see why people are disappointed with that fight?
I actually think it's a decent fight. I mean, Eubank's been out for nearly a year and a half or more.
Boxed on the same night as Joshua Ruiz too.
Yeah, so it will be a year and a half or longer. Yeah, a year and a half. Since he's boxed. Marcus Morrison went for a terrible patch, came back with a really good win in Italy to get himself in the world top 15. All my conversations with Calla was, we want to get out in some kind of domestic fight and then go into a big fight with Kell Brook or, was one of the names they mentioned, Golovkin or, whoever it might be. So I don't mind a fight. I quite like it. And I quite like it because... I don't know. I just like Joe Gallagher in that fight. Do you know what I mean? I know they'll be trying their nuts off to cause an upset in that fight, and it's going to be a very difficult night's work for Marcus Morrison.
Elsewhere on the card, you've got Dimitri Bivol versus Craig Richards. Obviously, it's a fight that we've kind of heard murmurs of in the past. Massive step up for Craig Richards against, as you say, in my opinion, one of the best pure boxers in the sport, and Dimitri Bivol. It's
just an opportunity of a lifetime for Craig Richards, and he's a massive underdog in the fight. Craig and Peter Sims fancy this fight so much, Before it was even made, Peter came on to me and said, listen, if you can land us a massive fight, we're happy to defend the British. Tremendous win last time out against Shakan Pitters. I mean, he was the underdog in the fight, wasn't he? And battered him, absolutely battered him. So they come on to me and said, look, if you can land me a big fight, we'd love to jump into that. We feel like he's got momentum, he's full of confidence, he's young, we're ready to roll the dice. And I just realised that Craig Richards was wherever he is in the WBA and just said, you fight Dimitri Bivol? I went, we loved that fight. Straight off the bat. And I was like, and I even thought to myself, fucking hell. Because Bivol is mustard. And then I started thinking to myself, you know what? He hasn't boxed since October 2019, Bivol. So by the time this fight comes around, it's nearly a year and 3/4 since he boxed. He's come into London, and I thought to myself, and when I knew that the fight could be made, I sat down with Peter and said, I guess you ain't ever going to get an opportunity like this again. When are you going to get a world champion that's been inactive for a year and 3/4 come into your backyard to defend his title with you coming off a great win? And they're all over it. So I think I applaud it. I also know it's going to be a tough night's work for him. But I promise you this, if you're ever going to fight Dimitri Bivol, now's a really good time to do it. Because he can really fight. But he's been heavily inactive. He didn't look that great last time. Can't remember who he boxed. On the Usyk card in Chicago, he boxed the guy who was going to gain a golden contract. He was an Olympian. Anyway, Bivol didn't look good, quite frankly. And actually, he didn't look that great against Joe Smith either. But Joe Smith is a good fighter. So actually, you can make excuses as to why you got more chance than people think you got in this chance. The reality is, this is a very tough fight for Craig Richards, but it's a Brit going for a world title against one of the best fighters in the world. So, good luck to him.
Big fight for Craig Richards. Do you accept it's not a big fight for Dimitri Bivol?
I think when you're Dimitri Bivol and you're looking for unification fights, yeah, I think this is just a voluntary defence from a top 15 guy. But at the same time, I bet Dimitri Bivol's pleased to get out. He's been looking for a fight for a long time. He was on great money. COVID, took that kind of fighter longer to get out with no crowds, and now he's thinking, wow, I've got a defence. I'm coming to England to box for the first time. I'm excited. But of course he wants to fight Beterbiev, and that would be the plan for him if he comes for Richards.
Beterbiev, of course, returns to action tonight. Is that the plan for you, of course, all being well with the Craig Richards fight, to make that fight, the unification at light heavyweight?
What, with Craig Richards and Dimitri Bivol?
Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev? Well, or maybe Craig Richards and Beterbiev, maybe.
I think that Bivol and his team are looking at the Beterbiev fight as the undisputed fight in time. I guess Top Rank will do Joe Smith against Vlasov and then Beterbiev against Joe Smith, which is a great fight. And then the winner fights Bivol, subject to Craig Richards spoiling the party.
Elsewhere on that card, Katie Taylor versus Taylor-Jonas. Taylor-Jonas, in a lot of people's eyes, unfortunate not to get a decision over Terry Harper. Steps up to face Katie Taylor in undisputed title fight. Great fight?
Massive fight, yeah. I mean, when we signed Katie Taylor and we signed Taylor-Jonas, it was just an obvious move to put them both in together. This is what was happening. And then all of a sudden, Natasha got beat, was just off her game one night, and it all came crashing down. And then Natasha put in a brilliant performance against Terry Harper. Katie Taylor said, I think that's a great fight for me. Everyone started talking about that fight. Of course, they boxed in the Olympics, that broke the decibel record or whatever it was of noise at any live event. And it's a really good fight. And I think right now, Taylor-Jonas' confidence is through the roof. And her and Joe will really believe they can win this fight. But Katie Taylor is pound for pound #1 fighter in the world. But it's a fantastic fight. And of course, yeah, undisputed lightweight championship on the line.
Final one on that card, Jazza Dickens versus Kid Galahad. Where is that fight going to land? There was a lot of rumours about that fight potentially going on that card.
It's not a fight. I think MTK won the purse bid for that fight. We have had some discussions about placing that. May 1st, it'll struggle to get on that card, but we have got dates that we're looking at. I would like to stage that fight. So a couple of other options in May and early June as well.
Any update on AJ Fury?
No.
Any discussions happen overnight?
Overnight? No. Not last night, no.
Okay, Eddie Hearn, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Look forward to tonight's show.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.